All right, everyone, new series here, Off the Radar. And basically, what we're going to do on these episodes is talk about albums that we think are underrated, don't get the love they deserve. And we've picked out 5 albums each for this first episode. And we do have a couple more episodes planned. So if you like this type of video, make sure and hit the thumbs up down below so we know and help other punk rockers find the channel. Lewis, how are you doing on this beautiful Saturday morning?
I'll tell you what, I wasn't planning on having my air conditioner running yet, but we're starting to get a little balmy here in New York. So I hope everyone will forgive me if they hear the wind tunnel turn on behind me. But otherwise, I am raring to go. Excited to talk about a bunch of these records. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. And just everyone keep in mind, these are not necessarily going to be records that nobody talks about, but just like kind of records that maybe just haven't stayed as relevant, maybe don't have the most Spotify listeners out there, and just want to make sure that everybody gives them a chance.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. And we will have very small bands down the road, but for this first one, we want to touch on maybe forgotten albums a little bit, and smaller bands that may have had like popularity in the early 2000s or mid 2000s, but we want to bring them back into the light. So the first band, it's been over here the whole time, is going to be 1208 in their debut album Feedback is Payback that came out in 2002 on Epitaph Records. And for me, this is part of the wave of what I call Pennywise core, the Epitaph kind of was signing back in the early 2000s. Like you had like 98 Mute and Deviates that I would kind of lump in there as well. And I mean, think about nowadays, I would kill if Epitaph would start doing that again because it is some dark times over there for real. So Epitaph, if anyone over there is watching and we want some more Pennywise core. And I think the first time I heard this, I could be wrong, but it was probably just on epitaph.com. Like they used to do e-cards for like every new album. And like back then we were just kind of buying any band they put out, like even like Union 13 or, what other random obscure bands, like we just bought them. And I'm pretty sure that's how I heard this first, but we also saw them a couple times in 2002, once on the Warped Tour, and then on the Punkorama tour in the fall, which was a hell of a show. That was Guttermouth, Gob, 1208, and Authority Zero. Like, I would still see that nowadays. So one of those 3 ways is how I came across this album. And guys, if you're watching and you like Pennywise or you like skate punk, I can't recommend this album enough. If you're short on time, my choice cuts here would be Lies That Lie, Outside Looking In, and Erase Them All. Probably just anyone too. But seriously, can't say enough about 1208 Feedback is Payback. If you like it, go check out the one that came out after this, their final album, which is Turn of the Screw. Another good one. It could have been this. Maybe that'll be on a later episode. But yeah, 1208 Feedback is Payback is my first pick. Lewis, anything you want to say about this one?
No, I remember that tour too, and I am all for you on like bringing this style back. We've definitely hit some dark times over at Epitaph, so much so that we completely neglected after 2010 on our rankings and left out like pretty good propaganda albums, which we should have mentioned. But yes, I do like this album quite a bit too, and recommend it for everyone who wants to get that bro down to the Pennywise style. It's good stuff.
All right, so that's our first one. 1208 Feedback is Payback.
All right, so for my first pick today, I'm going to go with Sixgun Radio, Please Press Me, which came out in 2003 on Bank Shot Records. I don't know how well known this record is, but for anybody who is kind of into that leftover crack scene or into just New York punk rock in the early 2000s, like this one just really landed on my radar hard. Hard, no pun intended here with the name, but I remember buying this, I think off Interpunk my first year in college when it got out, and I was so excited to get into this album, and it is excellent. I think from a lot of perspective of a first album by a band, it is so polished and just balls to the wall with like really no filler and just like hits hard the whole time. And I don't know who to compare it to really. Sixgun kind of is like a post-hardcore punk band, I guess, kind of just straight up rock and roll too at the same time. They cover Billy Joel on this too, I believe. But it is a solid album featuring SZA from Leftover Crack on 2 tracks. They're based in New York, so they were always close to my heart. Like I said, I got to see them at the Knitting Factory a few times, and I ended up meeting the guys. So this is kind of a story of what could have been. This band, I feel like, had a ton of potential. Just like listening to this album, it feels to me, and I see a lot of similarities to like some of the Lawrence Arms. And the Lawrence Arms, like when they kind of hit their stride and they were really making good records. It would have been really interesting if this album had ended up on something like Fat or Epitaph rather than Bankshot Records to get a little bit more, publicity, maybe get out and tour and support it and, keep the band going. Because I listen to this and I'm just like upset that I didn't get to hear a lot more from the band. But certainly I think this is one to listen to if you're kind of into that style of, Lawrence Arms, definitely the New York punk bands, Leftover Crack in there. And just give it a go, and please let us know what you think, because if you haven't heard it, this is one you shouldn't miss.
Yeah, guys, and you could still grab this over on Bandcamp, or it's only $3 on Discogs. I just checked, so it's pretty scarce. There's only 3 copies, so go check it out. It's on Spotify. It's on Bandcamp. That was Sixgun Radio. Please press me. All right, next pick for me is gonna be straight out of junior high and their album from 2009, Sharknocerous. And come on, that's a pretty cool album name. This album art is something. It looks like maybe a library book I would have read in grammar school. But these guys are from Nebraska, probably the only band we're gonna feature on the show that's from Nebraska. I don't know many others. But I believe that I heard these guys back in the early 2000s when Interpunk used to have like a search feature where you could search bands who are influenced by or bands who sound like. And back then I was just looking for bands that sounded like NoFX. And I don't really know if that's a good comparison for these guys. I'd say it isn't. But they did come up during that search. And I was deciding between this album here and the one before it, Kiss of Death. Which has this song, Happy Fun Song. And if you guys haven't heard that, go check it out. It's just like a bunch of Japanese brands and words, and it's really funny. I would definitely recommend Happy Fun Song off the album before this. But overall, I think Sharknocerous is like a more cohesive album with some better songs. Like my favorites on here are going to be Idiot, Don't Mess with Text, and My iPod's probably my favorite. The song My iPod's going to be a little dated now, but if you were around listening to music in the early to mid 2000s where you know how important your iPod is, definitely listen to that song. It'll bring you some nostalgia, some memories. Comparison for this would probably be like a goofier version of Alistair is probably the closest one I could think of. It's like humorous early 2000s style pop punk. And guys, if you like teen movie style pop punk, that's kind of how I would lump this in. Like think of like the National Lampoon soundtrack, and in that scope of bands, I think you would really like this. I used to love all those bands, all those soundtracks. This is like a really fun listen, really humorous lyrics. So if you're looking for something a little lighthearted to listen to on your weekend or your morning drive-in, check out Straight Out of Junior High. This, like I said, this is my favorite one, but the one before this, Kiss of Death, is really good too. Lewis, anything to say about these guys?
I'll be honest, I probably have to give this one a listen too, because I'm only really familiar with Happy Fun Song, and it is excellent. It's the most ridiculous song, but you got to give these guys credit. They were doing the Shark mashup 20 years before the movies were coming out, right? We got a Sharknocerous now. Now we have Sharknadoes. We have Sharktopus versus Megalodontosaurus or whatever. So these guys were way ahead of the curve on the kaiju-inspired art here. So I love this cover, and it's enough to make me want to listen to it.
All right, guys, you heard it here first. Pioneers of the shark hybrids. Super fun pop punk. Go check it out. Straight Out of Junior High.
All right, so for my second pick, I'm picking the great album 17 Reasons by Link 80, which is by far probably the most popular record that I picked on this list. It's not like it's an unknown record, but I want to talk about why I picked it a little bit. But first of all, so Link 80 was a band formed in the early to mid 90s in the San Francisco Bay Area. Headed by Nick Traina originally, who tragically took his life. Son of Danielle Steele. She wrote a great book about him. So if you're ever interested, you could read about his struggles with depression and substance abuse and stuff. But obviously, a really passionate guy. But this album, I mean, I don't know how to talk about this enough. I mean, when we were coming up in the punk scene, late '90s, early 2000s, skacore was out there, and to me, there was like three essential albums, like in like 98, 99, maybe before newer stuff started coming out. And that was like Suicide Machines, Destruction by Definition, this album, and then Op Ivy, of course, because who doesn't love Op Ivy, right? Those were the bands that were rocking. But Link 80 for me always had something special that the other ones maybe didn't have. And I don't want to take away from those albums because they're great in their own right. And I might even like them more. But there was just pure, like, unbridled rage on a lot of this album, which definitely translated through like Traina's performance through like the whole album, just like pure angst. Like it was like if you put Ian Mackay like in Minor Threat into a ska band. That's kind of the way I always thought about it. Like just the balls to the walls vocals. And so Link 80 put out 17 Reasons, like standouts on this one. I mean, like every song is good, but everyone loves Verbal Kint. Nothing left. I mean, the first four songs are just crushing it. And then when you even get further in, Dime Store Hoods is a little bit different. Good song. Dance Floor. Nowhere Fast. I mean, Nowhere Fast is probably one of the most memorable songs on the album. Nowhere Fast. That's where I wanna be. And it's buried. It's the 15th reason, if you will. So, but I mean, I can't really say enough about this album more than that. Link 80 did put out another EP, Killing Katie, which is pretty good. But then Nick Traina left, was kicked out of the band, started Knowledge, which is definitely worth a listen. Might have been a good pick for this show. Mm-hmm. And Link 80 continued with a new singer. Not a terrible album, but definitely lost a lot of that fire of these first two. So for me, I went and I looked at Spotify. Only 11,000 monthly listens for Link 80. And I was like, who are they compared to? I looked at Against All Authority, who was very popular around that time too. They're hitting the 100,000 mark. Suicide Machines are crushing it almost at like 500,000. And I realize people still love Link 80, but if this is one that kind of slipped past you, or you haven't given it a listen in a few years, just give it another go. It is amazing, and I think it still holds up as the day it came out. So, John, I know you love this album too. Do you have anything to add about it?
Yeah, and I feel like this album was underrated even like when it came out. Like when we were in high school and nobody knew about this band. And back then, like think of like you were saying, the skacore scene, there wasn't a huge scene like outside of the ones you mentioned. There wasn't a lot of bands doing this style. So for Link 80 to just come in with 17 Reasons and just like knock it out of the park and never really get a lot of appreciation for what they did, it's criminal. Let's just say it's criminal. This album is awesome, and you mentioned all my favorite songs, and Nowhere Fast is actually my favorite one on here, so I'm glad you mentioned it. But guys, seriously, skacore is back. It's really popular nowadays. There's a lot of bands doing it. Go check out Link 80, 17 Reasons. This is the hallmark album by them for sure. So you're doing yourself a disservice if you don't listen to it and you like skacore. That's all I really have to say about Link 80. Awesome band. All right, so pick number 3 for me is going to be Automatic 7 and their 2000 album Beggar's Life. And these guys are from Los Angeles, California, and I brought them up on a few episodes now in the podcast and on Instagram. I've erroneously said they're from New Jersey, I think twice now. I think because of the Bruce Springsteen cover of Atlantic City that I got mixed up. But they are definitely from LA. I fact-checked it because when I was pulling up this album, I was like, wait a minute, LA, is this the right band? But yeah, guys, I apologize for making the mistake in the past. So with that out of the way, I distinctly remember the first time I heard this band because I had bought the Vagrant Records 5 Years on the Street comp that I bought for the unreleased Blink-182 track Good Times, which up until recently is probably the worst song Blink-182's ever recorded. So I remember being really bummed about that. But it did introduce me to both Face to Face and Automatic 7. So in the end, I'm chalking that up to a win. And this album is really hard to find. It's not on Spotify. The CD itself is pretty scarce, but if you can get your hands on this, I definitely recommend it. It's kind of like a hybrid of 90s Face to Face and 90s Social Distortion. For me, best songs on here, there's only 10, but the clear standout is 98. That is one of my favorite songs of all time. Broken Record and Bow Down are both on Vagrant Comps, and they're both really good too. So check out those three, but definitely 98 first. It is such a good classic sounding punk rock song. It's gonna like really encapsulate that Orange County vibe that was really popular in the mid to late 90s. Seriously, guys, this band is so slept on, and I just checked now. You can actually pick up this CD for 49 cents on Discog. So go do that if you're interested in like a face-to-face Social Distortion especially style band. I'd highly recommend this band and this album. It's one of my favorites. Probably a top 50 album of all time for me. I know that's like a little weird to say about a band like Automatic 7, but I really enjoy this album. Lewis, anything you want to add to Beggar's Life?
I'll be honest, I'd have to give it another listen. That's the point of the show. I do remember you having this album, and I do remember the 5 years on the streets. So, I think I might actually have this record stored away in a, 500 CD book over at my mom's house. So it might be time to go visit mom and go dig into the CD case and see if I can dig it up and give it another go.
Yeah, guys, definitely check it out. And if you like it, just two songs I want to drop from the other album is going to be 40 Blocks and the cover of Atlantic City that I mentioned. Another couple really good songs by these guys. But yeah, go check them out. Automatic 7, Beggar's Life is the album.
All right, so John thought Automatic 7 was from New Jersey. I'm fairly certain that Beefcake is from New Jersey, right? So let's go ahead and say, I'm going to commit to that one, then I'll apologize later if I need to. But let's talk about Beefcake, Rejected, which came out in 1999. I don't really know what to say about this album. If you're looking for high art, this isn't it. The way I've always kind of described this is more along the lines of Guttermouth, but less mean-spirited. Kind of more of just a fun punk album in the spirit of like Vandals, obviously influenced by bands like Guttermouth, but like I said, just a little bit lighter on the commentary, and definitely has aged better in terms of not having a lot of derogatory comments in here. Maybe poorly, though. We have Bob Saget, I Hate You as second track, and now everyone kind of likes Bob Saget. But we're going to go back to 1999 where nobody knew Bob Saget outside of Full House. So this is just kind of criticizing him. But obviously, this is a very dumb but awesome, catchy album. John had got me into this, actually, I think. I don't know how you stumbled upon this, but it became like one of our standards to listen to. It's so dumb and so good. And we got to see them when they got back together, and they were touring, and there was like 9 people at the show, and we were the only 2 that knew all of the songs. We couldn't even pit because it would have just been the 2 of us running into each other in a 10-foot space or something. But they played main stage in Poughkeepsie, and it was a lot of fun. And they were talking about putting out a new album. Never quite heard it. Maybe, fingers crossed, 14 years later, Beefcake's going to just come out of the woodwork and put out another banger. But if you can get your hands on this album, if it's available anywhere streaming, I'm not sure John might have found some, but definitely give it a listen. Like I said, go in with just looking for a good time, kind of just shut off your brain, listen to some punk rock, just having fun, and you're going to love it.
When I was a little boy, my mother didn't want me right with the other kids at school.
What do you think, John? Did you find it streaming anywhere?
It's not on Spotify to the best of my knowledge. It used to be, so I don't know what happened. Like, it is on Fearless Records, which is, even now, they're probably bigger than they've ever been. So it's a little weird that it's not streaming anywhere, but you can buy this for $8 on Discogs. Probably my favorite songs on here are Little Bus and My Dominatrix, but really the whole album is really, really good. This is probably going to be my favorite pick of yours, because this is one of my favorite albums of this like genre, of this kind of like goofy anti-PC punk rock. But guys, like Lewis said, if you're a fan of like late 90s Guttermouth, this is like a must listen. It's just fast, funny, mildly offensive but good humored punk rock. I highly recommend this one as well. This would have been on one of my future lists for sure. So if you can find Beefcake Rejected somewhere, give it a listen. I'm sure some of the songs are on YouTube. Go check them out. Yeah. All right, guys. My album number 4 is going to be by This Time Next Year, and it's their second album, Drop Out of Life, released in 2011. And these guys are from Walnut Creek, California. I can't remember the first time I heard them, but I know that I saw them with Set Your Goals at some point in the mid to late 2000s, and I picked up the first album, Roadmaps and Heart Attacks, which is another good one. But this is the second album. This is the final album. I think it edges that one out a little bit. And although this came out in 2011, I feel like this would fit in like the Drive-Thru Records heyday. Like, this sounds like straight out of 2001, 2002. It would fit in with all those bands on the Drive-Thru tour back then. So if you like that sound, I definitely recommend this one. It's kind of like a hybrid of early Wonder Years and the Movie Life. And obviously the band name is taken from the second Movie Life album, This Time Next Year. And you can kind of hear a lot of that influence on this, just slightly more polished, a little more poppy. The whole album's pretty solid. Like, I can get through this one no problem. But my favorite 2 tracks are probably going to be Spoon Tonic and Get It, Got It Good. Don't track me down the beaten path of this resistance. So if you're looking for like a fast, catchy pop punk album, this I could definitely recommend. I feel like if this came out nowadays, it would be on a lot of year-end lists, because this style is definitely back. So looking for something a little new, go check out This Time Next Year. Highly recommended from me. Lewis, anything to say about these guys?
I gotta tell you, I never heard this album. I never even heard of this band. But maybe I'll listen to it. I've been to Walnut Creek, California. It's lovely. So if they're as nice as their city, it's going to be a great album.
There it is.
All right, for my 4th pick, I'm going with Beautiful World EP by the Bruce Lee Band. You guys might have seen the Bruce Lee Band, or the B. Lee Band, I don't know what they're releasing as now, has a pre-order on right now, I think, for a new album. Obviously fronted by Mike Park, who is just the best guy, it seems like. I've actually met him, and he was super nice and approachable as well. But Mike Park's been responsible for Asian Man Records, putting out records by Link 80, who we already mentioned in the show. Obviously responsible for a lot of the Alkaline Trio. So many good bands went through Asian Man, got a start there. And Mike Park's no slouch himself. He's been in great bands like Skanking Pickle, the Chinkies, the Bruce Lee Band, and then his solo work as well, which I can't recommend enough. This particular album, I don't know if it was popular when it came out. I think I got it either at his show, which I saw him, or I either ordered it online because I was excited about it. But I love this album, and it's so not in the normal style of music that I'm into. It's really in the two-tone, like second wave ska style that I never really clicked with, but for some reason this one just works for me. Some of those songs a little bit more heavy on that influence, the little ones more a little straight up ska. Personal favorites on this one, North of Montague and Running Out of Time, I think are by far the standouts on this album.
To the gates, beat the early morning rush time.
But I think I got to see Mike Park on his Backyard tour around the time this came out, and he was playing barbecues he was somewhere here in New York, and we saw him and met him and gave him the CD of my band at the time. We never heard back, Mike Park. It's okay. I still love this album, even if you never called me back. So, John, I don't know how familiar you are with this, but do you have any thoughts on this one?
No, I don't think I've ever heard this album, to be honest with you. But I mean, I'm into like a lot of the other Bruce Lee stuff. For some reason, this album just is off the radar for me. There you go. But I mean, after hearing you glow about it, I'm definitely gonna check it out. And yeah, Mike Park, super cool dude. Great for the scene. So guys, go check out Bruce Lee Band. They do have a new album coming out. I believe maybe in a few weeks. There's 2 or 3 singles out for it already. Go check them out. If you're into ska, if you're into just some upbeat, positive music, great band. All right, so final band for me is going to be probably the most popular band on the list, I'm pretty sure anyway. I'm going to do the Dwarves because I really think their 2014 album, Invented Rock and Roll, is the definition of off the radar. And as you can see, we took some liberties with the album cover. We did censor quite a few things because there is some T and V on there, and we are not a medical channel, so I don't want to roll the dice with YouTube censoring or blocking this video. So apologies for fans of the female anatomy, but we did have to cover quite a bit up on here. But back to the album. If you're watching this video, if you're watching Punk Rock Radar, I would imagine you've heard of the Dwarves. So they're not an off-the-radar band, but this is my personal favorite album by them. It leans kind of more towards pop punk than especially some of the early stuff, but even some of the 2000s stuff. It has some of the catchiest songs for me the Dwarves have ever written. Like my favorites on here are going to be Trailer Trash.
Trailer trash, fallen angel of the underclass. Teenage drive up with a perfect ass. Yeah, she moved in fast on me.
Kings of the World. Gentleman Blag is a really good song. I'm honestly really looking forward to the day we do the Dwarves tier list because they're one of my favorite bands, and I just feel like not a lot of people talk about them. Like for me, they're kind of like in that tier like the Vandals, where they've been around for so long, but they're just like underappreciated. You don't hear the Dwarves talked about as one of like the pioneers of like punk rock, or especially like their kind of like style where in the early years they're kind of mixing like thrash and other styles in, and they're just underappreciated. So I felt like this was the appropriate spot for them. If you like this album, the one that is a little before this, I'm blanking out on what it's called. It's a red album cover. I should have probably looked it up in advance. Go check that one out too. And the Epitaph ones too, Come Clean and Young and Good Looking. I definitely recommend those as well. And if you would want to see us do a Dwarves tier list, put that down below because it's definitely something I would like to do. I'm not sure how the other guys feel about the Dwarves. Lewis, anything to say about the Dwarves or this album?
I definitely don't have the same passion that you have about the Dwarves. Like, no offense to them. Like, I've always thought they were pretty good, but it really stuck out for me. So maybe I have to give them a second listen here and kind of reassess the library. But, old dog, new tricks, always hard to get back into stuff. So I'm trying. I will say the Dwarves are the masters of an album cover that just seems out of a time capsule. This album cover, I would have bet $1 million came out in 1998. And I would have lost that $1 million when it came out in 2014 with the shock value and stuff. Maybe a little gimmicky, but it seems like it's kind of their thing to kind of always use naked ladies on their album covers. So I won't ding them too hard. But yeah, it's sorry we had to censor, but I hope you guys check out the album and I hope it rocks for you.
Yeah, and if you like this, you can actually get a signed copy on their website for $20 on vinyl. I mean, come on, $20 for signed Dwarves vinyl. Go pick it up. Trust me, this is a great album.
Is it signed by the girls who are showing their T's and B's, or just the band?
It's probably just signed by Blag, but either way, $20. Go grab it.
Is this album good? It just also just screams New York to me. It is like 14 tracks of like working class punk rock and roll. And I'm meaning punk rock and roll in the strictest sense. Like there's a lot of just awesome guitar riffs on here, like little solos that just kind of accentuate the music with like definitely a throwback feel to the like, you know, 60s punk rock in there, 60s punk rock, 60s rock and roll in there. But they have such a distinct sound, the Stockyard Stoics, that if you haven't listened to them, I would definitely recommend it. It's a real shame they're not a band anymore. Their second album, Catastrophe, is also a really good album, but this one definitely edges out in the first one. Definite standouts, and I think a lot of people like Song of Babylon, Adolescent Chemistry, amazing. Two first opening songs there. My favorite song on the album is Land of Opportunity. Really fond of sad songs. This was a great band to get to see live. I got to see them a few times. I think at probably one of the Cracktoberfests. Also definitely a few times maybe at the Knitting Factory. But just pure energy from beginning to end. Man, did they rock. It's just, these are the type of albums that make me sad that I can't hear these bands anymore, you know? So at least if you get a chance and you think a band's not going to stick around, see them because you'll regret it. So that's the one advice I would give. If you haven't heard this album though, give it a listen. John, I know I definitely have played this album for you, probably in my car when we were growing up, because I've had this, I think, since it came out. So you have any thoughts on this one?
I do. This one I'm actually a little familiar with because I don't remember when this was. It was sometime between like 2005 and 2010. Jumpstart Records, which I'm not sure if this is what this is on or if they distribute it. They did like a little club. It was very, very cheap. I think it was $10 a month, and they used to send you like a box of vinyl and CDs and a T-shirt. It was an insane deal, and this was one of the CDs I got in one of my first boxes, and I had heard it from you, but I wasn't too familiar with it, and I had put it in the car on the way to work one day, and I was like, damn, this album is so good. The first two are my favorite on here too, and guys, if you were into like that New York style 2000s punk rock, like this is going to be one of the best. Like we had one earlier on the episode, but this is another really good one. Another band, like Lewis said, I wish was still around because I really enjoy this style. We're going to have more like this probably later on a future episode. And guys, if you want more episodes like this, like we said, hit the thumbs up so we know that this is something you guys want to see. We had a blast. We've been talking about it in between albums the whole time that we want to do more of these. We're just popping ideas off of each other. If there's an album that you think went off the radar at some point that we should check out, we should talk about, drop it in the comments below. We'd be happy to do it. Lewis, anything else you want to say before we wrap this one up?
Oh, I mean, it's just this has been a lot of fun. I know getting to talk about these albums, you know, that kind of maybe been slightly forgotten by history, and if we can kind of bring some of these to the forefront, and maybe even some of these bands that aren't even bands anymore see that their albums are still appreciated. Like, guys, you all rock, and just know that your music was important, even if some people never got a chance to listen to it.
All right, guys, so that's going to do it. Thanks again for watching. Make sure to subscribe, and we'll see you next time.